Spiro THEODORE Agnew. No, he's not named Agnew because, well, he did make a television program. He did went onto the news, yes, but that was not the reason why he was like all this all of a sudden called Agnew. But let's just get into today's intro, where we're just gonna talk about a corrupted VP. So, cue the intro. THEODORE. Again, his real name was Spiro THEODORE Agnew. So, let's get started. Note, this is the third time we're ever going to be talking about a THEODORE on this channel. We probably talked about Theodore Roosevelt already on this channel. We talked about Ted Sorensen, whose real name is actually THEODORE. And this is the third time we've ever mentioned a THEODORE on our channel. So, heads up, and let's just hope we get to talk about other THEODOREs. Okay, probably not, but still, it's kinda interesting to find that out. So, THEODORE Agnew. I'll just call him Spiro Agnew here, because that's his actual first and last name. He was the 39th Vice President of the United States, and he was the man. But first, let's start with a few dates. He was born on November 9th of 1918. Yes, that was his birth date in Baltimore. Check that out on the Google Maps. His father was a German immigrant, and his mother was an American woman. So hey, he's a little bit of a mixed ethnicity. Just like the Americans branched off from the British. Yeah, look at George Washington and everyone else. They can always if they just go far enough into their family tree, they can just go all the way to a British king, for heaven's sake. At least one person confirmed that. If you go far enough. So, yeah, let's just continue with this video. That was his birth. And now let's talk about his education. We don't know much about his elementary stuff, and not a lot of people know. Even Wikipedia doesn't know, and they're pretty reliable nowadays. But anyway, here you go. Here is the first university he ever applied to. And it is Johns Hopkins University. This was the university he first went to. And eventually, he went to the University of Baltimore School of Law. And that is the whole thing. This is where he graduated from at his own hometown's university. And yeah, and this is when World War II started. At least for the Americans, at least. In 1941, he enlisted into the U.S. Army. And he served there until 1945, the end of World War II. This is the only war he ever fought in. And during this time, he won the bronze medal. He was given the bronze medal, and in 1942, he married a sweet girl called Judy Isabel. And eventually, after marriage, Judy Isabel Agnew. Yeah, that was her eventual name. This was one of his World War II years, and having a medal in World War II is kind of the greatest honor. The more medals you get, the greater your honor, but he only got one medal, so I'm not sure that he got that much of an honor, like JFK, for example. He was a war hero, for heaven's sake. Now, let's get into his political years. Actually, let's just talk about one of his most political ones before his vice presidency in 1966. In 1966, in the state of Maryland, he was elected to become the governor of Maryland. I'm just going to call it ML. The governor of Maryland. And 2 years later, during a Republican National Convention, During the Republican National Convention, my best attempt at drawing the Republican logo here, the elephant, of 1968, Republican nominee Richard Nixon asked Spiro to be his VP on the presidential candidate. And he yeah, okay. And he accepted Spiro, I'm talking about. And then they eventually found out that the pair won. So that gives us 2 victory signs. One for Richard and one for Spiro. Eventually, a lot of things happened. Gerald Ford was the next vice president, of course, but still the same president. Now let's get into the notes. And here there was a lot of interesting that happened. Mainly Watergate. Now, Watergate. How did all of this actually just happen? For a lot of reasons. In fact, there is a lot of things that happened. In 1973, in fact, Watergate was at its most height. But let's go backtrack. And let's talk about the years before that. During Richard Nixon's nomination, there was a lot of things that kind of happened. So Richard Nixon did do a lot of the things that he promised, at least according to the speech. And I kind of believe the VP at this point, but I'm not sure what people respond to that, so let's just hope it's not very negative. But let's ignore all that, and let's focus on Spiro. We don't really know much about Spiro except one thing we are for sure. He was taking bribes during this time, as much as he did during taking bribes as his time in governor and other positions. Yeah, Spiro was corrupt. This is exactly the reason why there was a lot of things that happened that shouldn't even have happened. And of course, by now, Watergate happened. You can already get a heads up of what Watergate is in other Richard Nixon videos, or what videos related to Watergate, either if it's on this channel or not. And when Watergate happened, everyone was kind of forgetting about Spiro until someone found out that he was taking bribes. And everyone started linking him to Watergate, and then eventually we found out that it had nothing to do with Watergate at all. This was an independent thing, and Watergate was just a distraction, and they kind of got some evidence for that. So he was resigned from office in 1973, and he was replaced by, you know who? Gerald Ford. Yeah. He was the 40th VP of the United States of America. That's kind of cool. Everything I'm just going to say here is that this guy, Gerald Ford, did a pretty good job during his presidency. Well, he did turn into president, but Richard Milhouse Nixon, he was a bit corrupt, I will say. He did pardon Nixon right after he resigned, so that Nixon wouldn't be impeached and done a lot of criminal stuff. Well, let's focus on Spiro again. And Spiro, after leaving office, was allowed to keep practicing law until a courthouse disbanded him from practicing law ever again due to some multiple charges. He pleaded for no context during his tax evasion thing during his VP term, and that is kind of a bad ruin to your image. He resigned by office and was replaced by Gerald Ford. And since then, for the rest of his life, he mainly just stepped out of the spotlight a lot. He wrote a novel and memoir. His memoir was called Go Quietly, or Else, which is about his own life. And it looks kind of interesting. And so if you want to learn more about him, I guess you could look at this. But it's kind of biased. It literally just defends all of his actions. So don't believe everything in the book. Just don't believe the defending part of his own actions, okay? So that is the end. Literally. This guy, Spiro, died on September 17th of 1996. Well, I'm not sure a lot of people even remember him. Not a lot of people remember their VPs anymore. But there are a lot of things that could have happened. And this guy wasn't even impeached. And Richard Nixon wasn't even impeached. I mean, they both weren't impeached. They both resigned. And Nixon is the only president to ever resign. But Spiro is the second vice president to ever resign. Yeah. So that really is the end of this episode. So I hope you really guys enjoyed this episode. And if you guys did enjoy this episode, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Shnan out. Peace!